So, to elaborate in this lesson and extend the applications of what we're learning about thermal energy, thermal conductors, thermal insulators, and the engineering design process, we can pose the question to the students, what other heat related problems can you imagine that we might find similar solutions to? And an example that we might pose to the students is, what if a person's car breaks down when they're driving through the American Southwest during the middle of the hot summer and they need to wait for help? What solutions could possibly be designed to help people stay hydrated and less susceptible to heat stroke while they wait for someone to come and help them in that kind of a situation? The evaluations for this lesson include formative assessments and summative. The formative assessments include observing student participation during class discussions and review, the engineering design worksheet, the budget tracking report, and the final structure that they will create for the puppy. The summative assessment will be video reflections that the students make reflecting back on their experience during this project. And they'll be guided through that using a video audio reflection sheet. And the reason I decided to use the reflection as their summative assessment instead of the actual structure they're building is because I thought it would be possible that if students created a structure and perhaps because of the time limitations of the class or because when they actually built it, it didn't work as well as they originally wanted to, I didn't want them to think that if the actual structure doesn't end up working as well as they wanted, that they're not good at this. I didn't want them to think that, whether they're good at designing or engineering or something like this is based solely on their first attempt, which is really all they'll have time for, of a solution. I wanted them to think that it's the whole process and their engagement with the process that really demonstrates how good they are at designing and engineering. I wanted their reflection to realize that this is all part of a process, that when you're creating solutions and designing things, you have to go through the process of testing, improving many, many more times than we actually have time for in this lesson. And that reflection process is really where the work is and what's most important. So I wanted to emphasize that. And so for that reason, I made the summative assessment the reflection instead of the actual structures that they're building. For the works cited, I include the 2 lesson plans that I told you inspired this project. And for the materials required, there's quite a few. They include the Cool Puppy worksheet, which within it has the budget record sheet, the engineering design worksheet, and the video audio reflection. So each pair of students would need at least 1 copy of these printouts. And then in addition to that, because the students are purchasing, quote unquote, materials to build with, and they should have a wide variety of materials from which to choose, I include a materials list of some items which would need to be purchased, some which could probably be gotten from the school supply closet, other things that could maybe be borrowed or taken from other departments, the art department, the science department. So this is an extensive list of the types of things that we would need for this project. Just for example, I found that you could buy a dozen of these plush little puppies. These are probably the ones we would use for this assignment. They're about 4 inches. And so the students wouldn't have to create, full dog houses that are the size for a real dog, but they could use this and, respond to the size of the animals that we're using in this scenario. Another example is a material that we would want to make available to the students is styrofoam. These styrofoam sheets are available from Michaels. And on my purchase list, there are many items like this with places where they could be bought from identified. And now I'm going to show you the sheets that we are actually going to use for this lesson. Now, this sheet I did not actually make. It comes from the Teach Engineering website and the Cool Puppy Maker lesson plan that they have posted. And it's really wonderful. It explains the scenario for the students. It tells them about a lot of the materials that they have available. It very clearly expresses the constraints of the problem. It gives you a general overview of the engineering design process, and it forces the students to analyze certain things, what they anticipate happening before testing, what actually does happen after testing their structures using a heat lamp, and having them ask themselves things like, how effective do they think that the doghouse would be based on their tests, and how they might actually redesign it. I think actually if I was doing this lesson in the real world, I would probably edit this sheet. I would probably take out the test, analyze, and improve, because I think I address it in another sheet that I make myself. But for its explanation of the scenario at the beginning, and also its really wonderful budget tracking report that it has at the end for the students, I think those are really good activities for the students to engage in, and a good reference sheet for them to have. So I'd probably just do a little edit of this excellent sheet. So a sheet that I actually created based on the Cool Puppy sheet I just showed you, because I used this image, is a sheet of the engineering design process, because I don't just want to review that process with the students and have them just say that they went through it, but kind of skip the steps. I want to have a visible representation of them engaging with all of the steps. So after the students pose their name, it actually gives a space for them to write what is the problem in their own words, and a space for them to actually brainstorm and where they should collect some of their ideas that they've come up with together. It gives them a space to plan, and they can either sketch or write out a description of the plan that they're creating, and they can include some notes and maybe some research on scientific background that they have collected, and maybe make some notes for themselves based on the constraints and how that would affect their ultimate plan. In the create section, they can make a little list just for themselves. It doesn't have to be exhaustive, of the main materials that they would be using. And finally, it asks them to improve, test their solutions, to express what happened after their test. Was the doghouse effective at keeping the temperature under 90 degrees Fahrenheit when it had a heat lamp pointed at it from the outside for 30 minutes? And if it was effective, great. Why do they think it was effective? If it wasn't effective, why do they think it wasn't so? And what are any possible improvements that they think that they could make? And the final sheet that I created for this project is the video audio reflection. And the directions say to create a reflection by answering the questions listed below. You can create a video or audio reflection of the project. Some suggested tools include smartphone videos, Screencastify, Audacity, Windows Movie Maker, and iMovie. And the following questions that I asked them to reflect on, and which would ultimately be their summative assessment for the project, include, number one, based on your experience with this project, how do you think applying the engineering design process helps engineers design successful solutions to problems? Number two, what difficulties did you experience during this project? How did you overcome them? Number three, based on this experience, how important do you think communication is when working with others? Explain what role communication played in your project. Number four, what was your favorite part of this project? Explain. Number five, how can you extend what you learned during this project into other projects and/or real-world experiences? So I had a really great time making this lesson plan. It's something that I think in some version of it, maybe I could even use it in the makerspace. It was really wonderful. I really enjoyed this class and working with all of you. It was a great pleasure to learn from you guys. And I hope you have a great final class. And now it's time for Seema to present how this lesson could be differentiated for all learners. So have a great night, and thank you.